Welcome back to the Into Greatness podcast with Jason and Jolene. I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
And we're back with your latest favorite episode of our show. Well into December now.
How do we feel about that?
I don't know, because we're recording it like before Halloween. So it's one of those time travel things.
I felt your resistance there. You were like,
that's
ooh,
right.
December. He got like a yucky taste. Did your mouth start watering? Right?
No, it's tis the season.
Oh.
And next week we're talking about sort of holidays and how we holiday and that kind of thing. But this week, Jolene, you had a really interesting topic. They're all interesting, but you had a very timely topic to talk about.
One that's come up on my business page and kind of what you are experiencing right now a little bit, being forced to talk about the season coming up, but being mentally conflicted with that. Cognitive dissonance, my friends. So that is the mental conflict that occurs when your beliefs don't line up with your actions. So cognitive dissonance is something that comes up in therapy so much because essentially, I'm going to back up the truck a little bit. When we look at the symptoms people come in with, the things people complain about, the things they're experiencing, the things that are actually interfering with people's day, right? Anxiety being one of the primary ones, low mood, lack of motivation, all of these experiences are the negative things people are reporting. Resentment, they're irritable, all of these things. Picture it, right? Jason's like crawling in his skin right now. So that's what they come in complaining of. And it's like, once I start peeling apart what's happening in their lives, I'm like, oh my God, you are responding very normally to something that is abnormal in your life, which is a scenario that you are in, whether that be a situation, a job, a relationship, just a state of being with yourself. And I'll talk a bit more about that. But essentially, it's out of alignment. It is not consistent with what your belief system is. We can go back to the core of this being like religious belief systems. And when people start to expand and find exceptions to the rule and they start sitting in this, oh, well, that doesn't fit. And if I believe this and that doesn't fit there, and we start to feel discomfort. And it's all of that discomfort. It shows up as anxiety, as physical pain, as resistance to things, lack of motivation, fear to move forward, all of those things. So cognitive dissonance, I think, is like the sneaky black mold in our lives that we don't realize is there, you know?
What do you think, so for yourself, where would you catch yourself in moments of cognitive dissonance?
So much. So one of the common ones that could happen on a small basis, when we go back and listen to our discipline episodes, but when you want to discipline yourself to something, right? So a fitness and a nutrition plan, but there you are eating fast food or sneaking the donut, right? And you're like, fuck, I knew I shouldn't have done this, and it's inconsistent to what you're doing. And you find yourself maybe making excuses for it or trying to reconcile. So again, when we go back to that state of equilibrium and balance that we always want to be in, we're always going to seek that when we do something that counterbalances something, right?
Interesting, yes.
Yeah. So, it can be around belief systems. For example, there was a few people that I work with, of course, they're very unhappy in their jobs, but they are forced to go to them because the pension is good or the security of it, or maybe the hours are good, but it's not hard work, right? So there's always this resistance of I'm going and acting out on a day-to-day, giving this place my time and energy when it's not where my heart is. And again, when I say that out loud, I think of the unfulfilling friendships and relationships people might be in, or when your time runs out and your job is done somewhere, volunteer positions, we have so many things we're a part of in our lives, and some of them we have to let expire. Mm-hmm. And when we go past that expiry date, it feels very conflicting. Right?
Because you're doing it then almost just because you don't know any better.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, or because you don't want to ruffle feathers, or you don't want to create waves or disappoint people.
That's a big one, I think, that drives people, is the disappointing other people, right?
Yes.
Telling someone that actually this doesn't work for me anymore. Or, I just, I go with you to this class every week that's like a painting class. I'm not using it my own example, but I've heard it from other people. They go with their spouses or something, but it's like they hate it.
Yeah.
Just don't go. You don't have to go. Or my big one is visiting with the in-laws when I don't want to.
Yes, there is big cognitive. And so here's the thing is sometimes we will override that belief system, because it is more important for maybe some other things to just stay in place there. So we won't experience as much cognitive dissonance there, right? So if we are on a fitness and nutrition plan, you know, do you think, and I talk about The Rock's cheat meals all the time, do you think he feels cognitive dissonance when he has that cheat meal?
Not at all.
No, because he has worked that into his plan, and he's created a reward-based system, and he's boundaried it, and he doesn't he doesn't abuse it. Have you seen that fucking French toast?
Oh, it's crazy.
It's like
the
half
stack
a loaf.
of pizzas.
It's a half a loaf.
Yep.
So he does abuse it, but he doesn't extend it into like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So there's a time and a place for that exception to the rule. And I think like if you were to look at yourself, how much of like a black and white thinker are you? How much do you like to hang in the gray? And people who like to hang in the gray a lot, I think, get more comfortable with cognitive dissonance, not actually for a good reason. I think there's beauty in flexibility, but some people will get really comfortable in there because it doesn't require accountability sometimes. Yeah. And they stay very flaky in that in between, right?
Yeah, she's not here right now, so I could say I think my wife sits a lot more in the gray, and I'm definitely, Alicia, my counselors accuse me of, it's like I've got black and white thinking.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. It's one way or the other. There's no middle ground here. So
he's wearing a gray shirt today, guys.
No, it's kind of white.
It's black. No, it's like white base with black speckles.
Yeah,
they're not even blended into gray. That's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works.
Yeah. And that's honestly, that becomes like a communication, a meshing of things. And that's where some people will like butt heads on work ethic and this and that. And we could look at that from a feminine and masculine perspective and embrace the fact that she is more fluid on the feminine end of things. And that might not make sense to you, but there is a time and place for that flexibility and femininity in that flow, right? So yeah, really think about yourself and where are you in some of those realms. And then when we, go and explore that resentment episode from last season around resentments are where we've self-abandoned, and we self-abandon when we experience cognitive dissonance because we've done something against what our core beliefs are. And when we want to take this to a deeper level, it really is about core beliefs. It's not about basic plans and cheat meals and things like that. It is like if you make a commitment to eat healthy or get fit, essentially the core value under that is I value my body and my health, and every time I choose not to do that, I'm devaluing my body and my health and putting myself in a less important role, which then, if we want to take it further, is going to impact my children because I'm not caring for myself for their well-being and all these things. It means I might not live as long and yada, yada, yada. Insert guilt here. But that's also motivation and the reality of what a simple decision can tell us in a like subconscious manner, right? I'm not showing up for me. So at a core level, if you have a wound of not being good enough that started early in your childhood, 95% of the population carries this wound, folks, then you are going to punch the shit out of that wound every time you make that one decision to have the donut or the cheesecake or whatever. And I'm pro cheesecake here, guys.
I'm pro donut myself.
high in protein, right? So I want you to think about some of those pieces. We can flip that. And it's not necessarily just negative behavior too. It's positive behavior. So one of the places that it's really interesting to work with is when people start implementing self-care routines or things that require them to work against what their main programming was growing up. So as a woman, mine is like the hustle of the patriarch world, and the harder you work, the harder, you produce, and then your production and your worth are associated, right? And it's like boss babe mentality. So when I started easing into really like self-reflective self-care practice, that was a lot of doing less. That was hard for me because every time I chose to do less, I felt cognitive dissonance because my internal belief system was that I should be doing more. And this is so common with most people in Western culture, okay? Not even just men and not even just women, men, right? And it was around, like, again, using EMDR and different things like that to restructure the importance of doing less and how that actually allows us to do more. So I had to go back and reframe all of that in order for my actions of doing less and taking the self-care times and learning how to meditate and consider that productive time when I saw productivity on the other end of it. I had to do that in order to not feel cognitive dissonance every time I slowed down. Still work on it. Still have to work on it.
Me too. That's my struggle as well. Because I'm someone who would work all the time so hard, not take that time, and then just collapse. Like, you know, you'd hit a wall and fall apart.
Yeah.
And I do it like training, like my boxing training and all that kind of stuff. And that results in like injury, that kind of thing. So it's like teaching your highly productive mind the value of downtime.
Yeah.
And how that makes you work better. It's like there's a line in a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie of all things. You need to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's smart. And so for someone, say, like, I'll use myself as an example as a writer. Instead of writing 8 hours a day now, 5 days a week, I'll write maybe for like an hour or like have a 1,500 word count and do that like every day. And if it's done in half an hour, your day's work is done in half an hour. If it takes you a little bit longer because it's a harder day, then it takes a bit longer. But I found that more productive than saying 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Absolutely. Because you have to also find those moments of inspiration and the right times to do it. So some other examples of cognitive dissonance, and I really want to expand our listeners here because we don't talk about some of the extremes sometimes. And I do think that there's quite a few of you who are going to relate to this, but substance use and addiction, whether that's process addiction. When I say process, I mean pornography, shopping, gambling, right? Those are process addictions. They still interact with the same parts of the brain that are dopamine enhancing. That's our more habit forming neurochemical, but essentially people who are in active addiction and have difficulty with substances, they experience cognitive dissonance on a regular basis. They are letting themselves down. They are choosing a substance over their well-being. Addiction actually hijacks the hierarchy in our natural state, our body. So we have like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is essentially like food and shelter and water and all those things. Addiction will, chemicals will actually hijack that in the brain and say, you don't need that. You don't need to eat to survive. You need the drug to survive. And the drug, like I said, could also be gambling, you know, sex, shopping, whatever. So we will become biologically hijacked. That is like the closest form of self-abandonment you can experience. And because of that, you know, there is so much cognitive dissonance and discord that happens when you are going against what your belief system is. Now you're spending your rent money, or you're letting your kids down, or you're, you know, letting a partner down, or letting yourself down, your employment. Most people don't feel good about that, but something is hijacking it, right? That cognitive dissonance is so uncomfortable that it will perpetuate the use.
Well, because you're trying to numb that
Absolutely.
That cognitive dissonance
because
out, right?
You can't sit in that discomfort.
No.
And you also can't face that discomfort because it means you need to quit. So the result of cognitive dissonance is, in order for us to reconcile it, we have to face the fact that we are doing something against what our belief is. And if we realize it and admit it, it means we either ignore it and feel like shit about that, or we have to do something about it.
And that's the hardest thing quite often, especially if it's like an addiction. Like,
Absolutely.
Cracking any habit is hard.
Absolutely. And this will come out when people are like, oh my gosh, can you believe that person treated me that way? And like, oh, perfect example. Husband and wife team. Wife says, your mom cannot treat me like this anymore. What happened there? Blah, blah, blah. Not okay. Husband doesn't want to be in it. He completely agrees. This was literally a session yesterday. Completely agrees with the wife, but if he agrees with her, it means he's got to do something about it, and he avoids conflict. So he argued with her that it wasn't a big deal when inside he knows it wasn't right? But he has to verbally argue with her against it. Otherwise, it would mean he would have to do something about it. Think about these scenarios in your life, you guys. You're late on a deadline at work and you argue with your boss or your colleagues about why it's not important and it didn't need to be done, instead of being like, holy shit, I'm late and I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
All the
Kids
things,
do that all
so
the time.
much.
Kids do that all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just think about where this expands like into our life, and how much of our life are we feeling these inconsistencies? And then when do we reconcile them? What does it feel like when we reconcile them? What does it feel like when we actually give an exception to the rule and be like, well, this is where I'm going to be okay with that? Or, you know, when we're learning to set boundaries, those are big times this stuff is activated because, right? I mean, you're going to be doing things against what your belief system is, right? Especially like attachment parenting. There's big things there that we're constantly every day reminded about in terms of, pushing the limit on things.
So what are good ways then for people to deal with their cognitive dissonance?
Oh, walk around just ignoring everything. Like, clearly.
Numb out with pot and alcohol.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Jay, that's what we do. So, using substances, we fucking scroll.
Scrolling.
And
social media, I think, is the big out right now for people.
Yeah, and you find other people who are in like scenarios. So the wine drinking moms who are all in a problematic use, waking up feeling crappy, in a cycle of coming home, needing a glass at dinner, they will normalize the shit out of that because of what was that one Courtney Cox show where she had a giant glass and that's what she would always drink out of? I forget. That was a long time ago. It
wasn't Friends, was it?
No, it wasn't that. It was some show she did after that. But I remember that being like a big, oh my God, are we really normalizing this? But that's what we'll do is we'll go find memes and things like that to just like buffer that impact and then find other people to validate it but not do anything about it. So it will like acknowledge the cognitive dissonance, but so an example for me that I currently am experiencing is my schedule is too busy, and you guys know this. You guys know I worked really hard for the last couple of years to like find some really good balance and some me time and things like that. But my son is in rep hockey, and I'm so grateful my girls aren't playing this year because I can't be in two cities at the same time to get them to where they need to go. So it's been a blessing in disguise. But essentially, like, my son is on the ice like 5 times a week between out of town tournaments and things like that. So now there's so many more demands of me. So it goes against my personal belief system of how I was trying to structure a more peaceful schedule that was more balanced, because let's face it, this is an activity he's in, and I'm using quotes here, but like I'm forced to do this for him, but this is an exception to my rule. I am willing to be busier than I would prefer to be because I'm supporting him in this sport.
Which he's passionate about and enjoys,
right?
Yeah.
But every day I feel this pressure in my chest and the pressure in my head when I'm looking at schedules and coordinating, and now I have to do this and now I'm that, and how much is this going to cost, and where's the dog going to go? Fuck. Like, guys, right? I know you know this, right? And it's like, I can do this, and I'm choosing to do it. So it feels different, but I'm still experiencing that physical dissonance in a sense, right?
Oh yeah, huge, right? And it's something you can only maintain for so long, but hockey's a season and it ends. And
a 10-month season.
I know it's a lot longer than it was when I played. That's
like
for sure.
Right? Yeah. Spring trials should be any time now. But yeah, so looking at that, right, and being like, this is the physical symptoms and the aftermath of all of that, and instead of misinterpreting it, instead of calling it something else, I'm containing it with the label. This is the side effect of rep hockey parenting, right? Single parenting, essentially. So, that's, if you can contain it and label it, right? So like for you, where are some areas of cognitive dissonance that have crept up for you this year?
Mine was actually in the effort to do less. Because I'm just naturally, like, I used to really overfill my time, and it was way to avoid problems and doing therapy and stuff. But since I've done all this work in these last 5 years, now it's like I'm, and I don't go to a 9-to-5 job anymore. Mm-hmm. So I have like, people like, you're too busy to do that. And I would listen, like, yeah, okay, I'll do less. But it's like, but then I really wasn't happy doing less. So I found now, like, I do more, but I just do less of the more, if that makes sense. Like today, like I've done some stuff around the house. I've done all my editing for the day. We're doing this. I'll process the podcast. I'll be done by like 1:00 and my day's mine. But I'm still doing as much as I would, but I'm not like spending more time on doing everything.
I like that. And it's your choice. There's something about free will. When you're being told to be at a 9-to-5, it's so different than like, what are you going to fill this time with? So because my son has 6 a.m. hockey on Wednesdays, so I'm up at 5 with him, I purposely don't book my Wednesdays with client work. So typically I'll head to Pilates first because I'm prioritizing that. And then I will come and do this with you now that we've scheduled it in, and plan some other things. And sometimes that's clients and sometimes that's other things. So I can have a fully booked, quote unquote, free day.
Yep.
But it's a free will choice day of like, this is a flexible day in my mind that now staff meetings fit into, or other appointments, or choice client appointments, right? And if I need, like I had to get skate sharpened on my way here, so I could fit that in, right? All those kinds of things. Sometimes I think that is like the perfect buffer. So you can still be constantly doing something, but sometimes it's even scheduling in your downtime.
Yeah, which I would.
Yeah.
My buddy Sean always bugs me about it. You have to book time to do nothing. It's
Yes,
like,
I do.
But I like that, because then it's like, okay, I know I'm getting to that point where, oh, for the next 2 hours, I'm not busy. I'm going to build my Lego Daily Bugle, or meditate, or watch a show, or read a book.
That's your rest stop on the highway.
Yep.
You know, I know where the bathroom is after Falkland, because if I stop at the corner store, I'm dropping $40.
Yep.
So we're going to the side of the road bathroom now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know where your road stops are, because if you have a tiny amount of space between like 4 meetings back to back, you might eat the wrong food or misbudget your time in those meetings. But if you have a scheduled road stop, you'll know, like, don't drink the coffee. I got 20 more minutes,
and
right?
I get there, and then everything's fine. I'm going to do what I need to do. And that's how I work. And I think it's funny how I think some cognitive dissonance is put on us by other people who do things a different way. Like, I can't put my schedule on my wife.
Right.
She doesn't work that way. She needs to kind of have just
come on,
flow.
Jess.
Just do it. What's going on? But no, like, it's true though, right? But I would do that earlier in the relationship. But now it's like, no, she doesn't work that way, and I don't work the way she works. So we kind of found a way around that.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, once
Yep.
you each learned that about each other, and you didn't take it personally, but you were like, this is literally a different way of working. Like, we have a different way of doing it, and how do we mesh that together? And I think that those are cool points that you can get to in any kind of partnerships with colleagues, with friends, you know, teammates, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
that looks like. Yeah. Yeah. So have a think about that, folks. Think about what cognitive dissonance means to you, how it shows up in your life, how you reconcile that, how you observe it in others, okay? And this actually, for young kids, there's a huge amount of it in social pressures, right? Kids who are against drugs and alcohol, witnessing their friends vaping and things like that, right? Like, it is very interesting to see how teens and even children wrestle with cognitive dissonance, and kids really start playing with that idea of like, what is right and what is wrong, and why are people doing things? So example, this morning, it's pitch black out. We got like 7 minutes to get to the arena and I'm going a little faster along Parkrest. Story guys, right? And Marshall's like, why are you speeding, Mom? And I was like, well, it's dark and there's nobody on the road, babe. And he's like, but you're still supposed to go the speed limit. I'm like, you're not wrong, buddy. You're not wrong. So they are looking for these discrepancies all the time, right?
Well, they learn from us, right?
Because kids are black and white rule followers. They really want to be, but then they watch where we can extend and make exceptions to, like this. Like, we don't do that when we're driving to school, because someone's always driving slow in front of me. But we maybe do it when no one else is on the road, or things like that. So it's really interesting. Or, you know, we don't eat cake for breakfast, but why do we do it after our birthday, Mom?
Or
right?
After like Thanksgiving or
oh
Christmas,
my God,
we have like pie for
my
apple
mom.
pie and ice cream for breakfast.
Like, it's true. My mom just brought pumpkin pie over last night, so I gave the kids each a slice before they got some in their lunch, right?
Yeah.
I was like, here you go. It's high in fiber.
You'll be fine.
Right? Yeah. So think about those things, and just how much more aware you are of it. And we didn't focus so much on it here, but I do in therapy a lot when people have primary structured belief systems, specifically religion, and ways that they have grown up family value wise. And we have moved from rather conservative to more like left-wingy kind of ways of living. And that becomes very conflicting for some people to undo generational belief systems into their own and what fits for the present day and how they're raising their families. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that'll roll out that way as well.
Well, big, especially I find amongst Catholics, because it's very strict.
I mean, I wasn't going to label it, but if you want to toss that,
that's all right. I just did. But I think in a lot, any kind of religion, I think that's starting to happen. Which, I mean, that can be a whole other time. We've never really addressed religion on this show, and I think one day we will.
Yeah, we might, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think, easily able to identify which are more rigid belief systems, right? And yeah.
All right, folks, that wraps up this episode. We're back next week talking about holidays and vacations, Because it is the season.
Yeah, Jason and I each took holidays, and mine was quite an extroverted experience, and his was a fairly introverted one. And we're going to give you all the juicy details.
Coming up next week. Until then, I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
Talk to you soon.